Appreciate that.
Thank you. We'll get underway here in a few minutes. A couple minutes away from beginning as people start entering the chat room. I'm Denise Pulverine. I'm the Vice President of the Press Club. I'm also the Director of Digital at WKYC, but in my capacity as a member of the Press Club tonight, like many of you. Please put yourselves on mute unless you will be talking. It's much easier that way if everyone's on mute. Post your questions in the chat room. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with Zoom now. So post your questions in the chat room. We will get to as many as we possibly can. Russ Mitchell, our executive editor at Channel 3 and main anchor, is going to be moderating the discussion tonight, hosting this discussion, but he will be taking your questions too. So make sure to post them in the chat room. And please, other than the mayor and Russ, please keep yourself on mute unless, you know, there's a natural opportunity to join the conversation. So about a minute and a half away. We do know, for anyone who has done this with us before, that we do have people that come into the chat room, unfortunately, you know, a minute or two after. So we'll just, we'll get underway here in about 30 to 60 seconds, Russ.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think whenever you're ready, Russ, we'll begin the conversation. Just, you know how Zoom goes. People will just join as we go along. Post your questions and keep yourselves on mute and listen to the conversation and join in, you know, through the chat room for sure. We really want this to be an engaging program. So, all right, without further ado, Russ, take it away.
All right, Denise, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'm Russ Mitchell, 6 and 11 o'clock anchor at WKYC, Channel 3, and also executive editor, also a proud member of the Press Club board. And we welcome you all tonight to a conversation with Mayor Frank Jackson. As Denise just pointed out, I'll be interviewing the mayor, but we'll also be taking your questions. So please send those to us in the chat room, and we'll get to those at various points throughout the evening. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome the 57th mayor of the city of Cleveland, Frank Jackson, to our conversation tonight. Mayor Jackson, thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And it's 56.
56th. I got to stay off of that internet. It tells me the wrong information all the time. So anyway, thank you for correcting me on that. I appreciate it. In these strenuous times, sir, first of all, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. You know, as I always tell people, I try to stay on my game and handle the business at hand.
In these tough times for all of us, and obviously you've been very busy, what has been the most challenging part of your job over the past few months?
If we are in complete honesty in this format?
Yeah, I hope so.
Managing bullshit.
Pardon me?
Managing bullshit.
Okay.
Okay, you know, the job of mayor is the job. You shouldn't sign up for it unless you're willing to deal with the challenges of it. And it's not to say that those challenges aren't difficult and decisions are hard sometimes, and sometimes you have to adjust depending on how things are flowing. Being right today doesn't make necessarily right tomorrow, depending on the situation.
Yeah, sorry.
So that's just part of the job. But doing the job is not difficult, and for me, is not that it's easy, it's not challenging, but that's what I signed up for.
Yeah. I have to ask you, what would fall under the category, to use your term, bullshit?
Drama, whatever it may be, whatever that is, to distract from doing the business at hand or doing things of substance, whatever that is. what
How do you deal with that?
I hire good bullshit handlers.
Okay.
And then I've learned to filter in a proper way so that I don't get into it or spend too much time there. So if I catch myself there, then I'll just quickly move on.
Yeah. What has this time meant for you personally? Has it changed you at all? Has it had you think about things differently? How would you describe it?
I can't really answer that right now. It's a better question for when it's over with, and then it's like being in a good fight or dealing with things that are intense for the moment. While you're involved in it and immersed in it, it's not a good time to analyze what you're doing because you're thinking too much. So, when it's all over with, I'd probably be better able to answer that question.
Yeah, I have asked you in the past if you like your job, and your answer has been, "Of course I like it. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't like it." Do you
Well,
still like
I'd say that I like it as long as I can get something done. Job that inability to get anything done for whatever reason is not worth having. That's why I have a low tolerance for BS because it's non-productive. It uses up a lot of time, energy, resources, but it's not productive. You can't get anything done with it.
Yeah, is it? I mean, you've been mayor since what, 2006? Is it harder for you to get stuff done now than it was in years past?
No, I believe I've what I call matured in the job in terms of learning the job and the position and knowing how to get things done better and how to be more efficient with the use of the position and things like that. So now it's not more difficult for me. Matter of fact, in some cases, it becomes easy as I mature or learn the job.
Yeah, I got to ask you: is it tiring? Are you saying to yourself, you know what, I'm done with this?
Oh no, I don't say. You know, if I said that, I wouldn't even be having a conversation with you right now.
Right.
I can't get a short timer's mentality, or because I'll behave like a short timer, right? And so I just handle it as time goes on, and then people have asked me, what I guess you're alluding to, whether or not I intend to run for mayor again, and I always answer them by saying that I haven't decided, and that's the truth. And the reason why is because I don't want to develop attitude of one or way or another. If I say I am running, then I become a target and have to deal with more of the unproductive side of life. And if I say I'm not running, I can't even get a phone call return. So I just continue to do the job.
Uh, You're right. There was a question I was going to come to you later with, but let's examine that right now. So, is there a possibility that you will run for a fifth term?
I have not, honestly, I have not decided that. It's not appropriate for me at this time to decide that, because if I did do that, if I decide that I'm running and then I make decisions based on running again, or I decide I'm not running and then just remove myself from my duties and obligation and challenges, or not be effective because people don't believe they don't have to work with me to do things. It wouldn't be fair to myself. It wouldn't be fair to the city and the community. So I really haven't decided.
What I hear you telling me, though, is it's a possibility. Is that a fair assessment?
It was a possibility last time I ran.
And you did run.
Before that too, you know, when I ran the first time, I had enough time to retire after my first term. As a matter of fact, people were predicting then that I would retire because I had enough time and things like that. So every term and every time I run, it's the same process with me. There's nothing different in terms of me making a decision.
Yeah, I'll move on. But again, just to put a period on this, you haven't decided, but it's still a possibility.
Oh yeah, yes, yes.
Okay. let's talk about some of the challenges specifically over the past 2 weeks, and let's begin with those protests
Right.
of 2.5 weeks ago. As you watched those peaceful demonstrations turn violent, first of all, were you at home or in your office when this was going
Oh,
on? Were you?
I was at the emergency operations. I was at the command center.
Gotcha.
One of the one of the people, a few times I was asked by media, why didn't you hold a press conference? Because I was busy. We were in a very intense moment. Myself, the chief, and some other people in the emergency operations center, and all the people who come together once we call people up. And we were dealing with reports from the field. We were following live stream videos from some of your channels. Had our intelligence people out. We were listening to social media, and we were engaged on a every second in this. So I was in the command center.
I want to come back to that, but let me just, along those lines, you were in the command center, you were watching this unfold, you were watching this go from a peaceful demonstration to violence, to violence. What was going through your head as you watched this unfold?
Well, it is that this is going the wrong way, and that is not what we wanted to happen. And so that's why we took quick action once it began to go that route, to ensure that it wouldn't happen again. We immediately that night declared a curfew and cleared the streets and allowed peaceful demonstrations in other parts of the city. And that over time, we reduced the curfew geographical area, and then we lifted it during the day, and we gradually went back to normal as it is now, so people can flow anywhere in the city. Our challenge was, how do we protect the interests of people and businesses while at the same time allowing for constitutional and peaceful and legitimate protests and demonstration.
I'll clean it up. Was there a holy smokes moment for you? Like, oh my goodness, this is not happening the way I thought it was going to happen?
I'm not being evasive in this. When I'm in an intense moment or a fight, like, I don't be thinking like that. I just deal with what I got to deal with right then, and I just dealt with it myself. The chief, his field command, the people were out on the street. Our intelligence people, our social media people. It was just a matter of dealing with what the reality of that moment was. So it wasn't like that kind of, I didn't have that kind of thought or feeling.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned the question of why didn't we hear from you that day? You said you were in the command center working. I think we heard from you at 12:30 that night when you held a press conference with Chief Williams. There were people, as you know, who did want to hear from you that day. There were business owners who told us, and quote, I'm going to quote these folks, "Where was the mayor? He let us down when we needed him. Mm-hmm. Where were police? The strategy seemed to be prepare for the best, not for the worst." Mm-hmm. What would you say to those people who felt they were let down by the mayor's office because they didn't see you that day?
Well, I mean, that's what people have a right to have their opinion. I wouldn't change what I did in terms of how I conducted whatever we did that night. And in terms of when we did the press conference, I wouldn't change it. People have a right, and the more that people are harmed by something, the more they will express themselves in a negative way based on who they believe should have protected them or responsible. And that's legitimate. People have that right for that sentiment and feeling and thought. It's the same way that they probably have a right to be appreciative of the fact that we only had one night as opposed to 6 or 7 nights in a row as others have had.
Was the city prepared for this, Mayor?
If we were prepared for it in a sense that we could have avoided it, the quick answer is no. I mean, the fact that it happened, it happened. But were we prepared for violence? Yes. There were logistical things that occurred that made it more difficult for us to respond in an appropriate way. And I think there was about, if you talk to the chief, and as he's doing his debriefing with his command staff and his field operation people, and as he does that over the next couple of weeks, they'll come back and they'll talk to him about what happened and why it happened, what we could have did here, we could have did there. And in essence, I would say there was probably about an hour's time, about an hour window where whatever happened and once in that hour was really the time in which things happened in a way that wasn't good for Cleveland.
You said at the press conference on Sunday that you were pleased with the job that the city did on Saturday. They said you said there were things that you had learned from that, as you learned from all situations. If this were to happen again, what would you do differently?
Well, again, that's why the chief will be doing a debriefing with his people. As you know, we've gone through a few demonstrations this past weekend, and they pretty well went well, and in terms of being peaceful. But so he's really still on top of how do we prevent things now. But in the next couple of weeks, he'll have a report back to me as to what he believes should have been done differently and how we should handle things in the future. You know, I leave that up to him. I'm not the police chief, although I am the person who will oversee whatever happens and have to accept whatever responsibility, whether it turns out good or bad. He is the person who I charge with dealing with these kind of things. And he'll come back to me in a week or two, and he'll let me know that, and that would be something that we will gladly talk to anybody about.
We appreciate that. Okay, that's the police chief, what the police chief would do differently, but what would you, as mayor of Cleveland, do differently if faced with this again?
I wouldn't do anything different. You know, I would do exactly what I did. I'd go down to the command center, and I would do my proper role at the command center and to provide support for law enforcement as we did to in the aftermath of what happened that Saturday night, organized the city services to go in and clean up, to assist businesses in boarding up, declare curfew through proclamation, declare a curfew, prevent further damage to downtown, redeploy, gave us the ability to redeploy our resources out into the neighborhood, which was the next line of attack that those who intended on violence were going to do. And so we deployed there that helped to prevent things from happening in various parts of the community. So all that stuff is what we did. I would do the same thing.
You're a former teacher, and I know you've attended many classes. Well, you're a teacher to many in so many ways. What grade would you give yourself in terms of how you handled this?
I don't do that.
Uh-huh.
I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't give myself a grade on how. I did what I did, and I handled the business I had to handle at that time. And I don't give myself a grade like that. I'm not going to do that. This pass fail, I guess. And if those who believe I passed, fine. In terms of the number of days that we had social unrest, those who believe I failed because of what happened on Saturday night, that's fine. That's the judgment that people have, and they have a right to that. And if I'm mayor, then I have to accept whatever people's opinions are based on how they come to their conclusion. But I don't grade myself like that.
Let's move on and talk about coronavirus. The effects of COVID-19 on the city, the entire area, obviously, have been devastating, with fewer people coming downtown, fewer people going to businesses. There are no sporting events. There's no concerts. I mean, nobody's spending money downtown at all. No tourism as well. is a hit on taxes coming into City Hall. How is this pandemic affecting Cleveland from an economic standpoint?
Well, as you know, not the service economy. I forget the terminology, but it's terminology around Destination Cleveland and the economy around sporting events, hotels, convention, all of that economy is dependent on large numbers of people. And whether you're going to a sporting event, to a restaurant, to a convention, or just milling around downtown, it has a lot to do about having large numbers of people to support that economy. So the fact that the coronavirus happened and the fact that there were specific businesses closed up and specific activities like concerts and sporting events that were no longer allowed, the Playhouse Square and theaters and movie theaters, all this kind of stuff has significant impact on that. And so when you look at the revenues associated with that around admission tax, parking tax, hotel bed tax, those kinds of revenue streams that would come to the city, they pretty much zeroed out. And so that is what happened. And they've been zeroed out for probably since mid-March, I think it was.
Right.
March, so mid-March, April, all of May. Now we're in June, and we're just beginning to re-engage with like hair salons or barbershops or restaurants. We released something today, I believe, that you should be getting at media on our outdoor dining for certain parts of the city where they have restaurants that will allow for them to reopen and have social distancing and all this other kind of stuff. So we're gradually getting back to it, but it had a significant impact on the revenues associated with that economy,
Do you see layoffs? Do you see major cuts? How will this eventually manifest itself?
Well, fortunately, we budgeted in a recession. When our budget is $1.8 billion, and it's in enterprise accounts and in general fund. The general fund is the one that is reliant on tax revenue. The enterprise accounts are user fees like airport, water, Cleveland Public Power, sewer, those kinds of things. So the tax based budget is around $670 or $80 million. And so we built in a recession in that budget. Our expectation is that it would come after the presidential election or in the first quarter of next year. And so with that, building that in, we had a cushion. And as a result of when the virus hit, unfortunate for us, rather than it coming in the fourth quarter this year or the first quarter next year, it came at the end of the first quarter this year. And not only did it come months sooner than we had anticipated, it also was much quicker and more intense in terms of its depth. So as a result of that, we have lost revenues. And in a normal situation, if we had not built in a cushion for recession, then we would be in a layoff mode right now. But because we built it in, we're able to carry government in terms of service delivery and those personnel needed to deliver that service right now. When we looked, I just had a review of our budget today, because we review it now on a weekly basis. And as we look if you give me a little time, like June, we'll give you the activity of May in terms of collection. And our primary source of revenue would be income tax and tax on profits and things like that. So the activity of May is reported, is seen in June. And we're halfway through June. And as of right now, we are, based on the high activity in terms of our economy in the first quarter, we're not that far off in terms of what we budgeted and what our, in terms of expense. And so our revenues even go down. We have instituted some cost-cutting measures by delayed hiring and cutting this and that without cutting service. So that cost-cutting measure has helped to make up some of that revenue loss in terms of balancing out the combination of the two. Year to date, we're down, but not to the point that we would need to lay people off. Now, finally, what we will do is we will review in July the activities of June, and that will give us a clear indication as to whether or not that decrease in revenue is flattening or is it continuing to go down, and at what rate is going down. And if it continues to go down at a larger rate, then our choices on cutting costs will involve layoffs at that time. But right now, we're okay. Long answer.
Well, I understand. Forgive me if you said this, but is there a moment? Is there a date on the calendar where this becomes a real issue? Where
whenever it materializes, it's a real issue, and as I'm saying, it's not materialized yet. And then we're looking at June, and based on being halfway through June without all of our tax receipts coming in, we are okay, even though down in terms of revenue versus cost. But because we've cut costs in some areas without laying off and budgeted for recession, we're able to ride that storm a little bit longer. There will come a time that I think July will give us the activity of June, and it will give us the trend. If that trend is continuing to go down, then we know we'll have to take more severe measures to keep it in line. If it's leveled out, then we'll have a more comfort zone with it.
Sure. So we're looking at next month and beyond if things.
It's on a weekly basis right now, and it has not. That moment hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah,
it's not that it won't, but it hasn't arrived yet.
And again, forgive me if you said this. Payroll taxes, is that really affecting the city right now?
It is. The payroll taxes is largest taxes. I will say that on things like corporate profit and some other income around businesses, is that there's been we postponed the collection until July. So what was an April 15th or April something filing date is now being extended to sometime in July. So there's a period of time right now where we're not collecting revenue that we would have collected, and that's based on 2019 activity, because you collect taxes on that activity. Is not based on COVID activity of this year. So since we delayed filing or postponed filing, people don't have to pay that right now. So that's why we're looking at July, when that filing and payment time comes due. That will give us a better indication.
It sounds like we potentially are right on the line of big financial trouble.
Was you contexting in a way that I didn't say.
I'm asking though.
We're monitoring this on a weekly basis, and right now that moment of having to take more drastic measures have not arrived. In July, when this filing comes that we extended, along with seeing the trend of our activities that are going on in current tax collection, then we'll be able to make that decision. If it is on the verge of, or that trend is going the wrong way, then we'll take more drastic measures in keeping our budget in line.
And Cleveland, obviously not the only city in Northeast Ohio dealing with this. Do you see a day where the economic realities of this situation force Cleveland and suburban leaders to take a closer look at governments merging and cooperating, even a regional government in some ways?
You know, I think there are those who have that in mind and think this is a great opportunity to move on that concept. So there are people who've had that in mind for quite some time and see this as a never waste a good crisis, I guess, in terms of taking advantage of the opportunity that presents itself. So I think there are people who have that in mind anyway. Now, whether or not that's a legitimate question is in my belief, it is a legitimate question based on the reality as we come out of this. Now, but I will say to you that changing just a form of government and expecting a different outcome is really living in an illusion. Having to deal with reality and addressing that reality. And if part of that reality is that you have to change your operation or change the form in which you do what you do, then that's legitimate. But to have an agenda already that says that would be the best solution for a more efficient operation, I don't buy into. And if I can explain that a little bit, we're not for profit. Our job is not to make money. Our job is to provide service. So we're not in business to make a profit to go to shareholders. Our business is to be able to collect the revenues we need in order to meet our bottom line, which is service delivery. And our job is to be efficient in doing that so that it costs our businesses and individuals less money to have to do that. There are, however, some people who are in some agendas that would prefer to have fewer people they have to deal with in order to accommodate whatever it is they want done. I'm a firm believer in representation. And that's why I was opposed to the reduction of council, because the closest thing that the average person or small, medium-sized business have to bring grievance or access government or to have some way in which to have government respond to them is through representation. And the more difficult you make that, then the less they will have the ability to grieve government. Big shots will always have their way. They'll always be able to access, whether you're a mayor, a governor, or a president, or president of a Senate or a Speaker of the House. Large corporations and people with influence will always have that ability. The average person won't. So my opposition to it being just an agenda that talks about efficiency, that's a great business model and a great model to consolidate power in fewer hands. But if you're talking about a democracy, where the average person has the ability to access and to be represented, it is not necessarily the best way around.
So now, clearly not something you support. But let me. We've only got about 30 minutes.
I don't support it. But I also said to you that I'm very practical in regards to this. That just changing that form is not going to get you any different outcome you got today. You just consolidate power. That's all you do. If you want to accomplish the end, and it is a necessity to change operations or change the way you do business to meet that necessity, then that's a legitimate question. I just don't think the people promoting it right now are talking about that approach. They're talking about the former approach. That's my point.
I understand. We want to take questions from the folks on the Zoom, but let me ask you, Mayor, first of all, again, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff happening in City Hall, a lot of, we've been talking for the last 30 minutes about just a few of the issues. that you deal with every day. You began this by talking about the BS, I'll clean it up, that you have to deal with as well. What keeps you up at night?
Uh, uh, I don't know what. Let me think about that. What keeps me up at night? I try. How's my wife doing? How are my kids doing? How how are they doing? Are they safe? What are their challenges in life, and how can I help them? Am I hurting them or helping them? That's what I worry about. This other stuff, this will be here. This will be here when I'm gone. It was here when I got here. It'll be here when I'm gone. And what I do is my job while I'm here. And when I hand this off, either through getting defeated or deciding not to run, my goal is to have a better city than it was when I started, and to have that city function in a way that a larger number of people are able to benefit from the prosperity and the quality of life that we do. That's my goal. Now, but what keeps me up at night is where my children are, my grandkids, and how's my wife doing. That's what I worry about.
I'm going to have you stand by, Mary. Again, thank you very much. I'll get back to you in just a second. Denise Pulverin, you have some questions from some folks.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions in here. Russ, one of them from Tristan Sanchez. He's asking, how do you plan on rebuilding trust in the communities that are no longer in the city following recent events? And how will the city bounce back to help those unemployed get back on their feet?
When you say building trust with who? Can you read that first part again?
Sure. How do you plan on rebuilding trust in the communities that are no longer in the city following recent events? People from different communities that are coming down to the city, and how do you build that trust again?
Also, that they come back to the city?
Yes.
Or part of that industry that we lost, that economy that we lost.
That's right.
And what the trust is, if that's a factor of fear, that's one thing, and that's why it was so important for us not to have a day 2 or day 3 or day 4 or day 5 of that violent social unrest that was about destruction of property. That's why it was so important, so that people not only believe but know that it is safe down here, and that you don't have to worry about that. So that's one thing. Building that economy, that industry again around there's the underlining thing of for that economy to prosper, to have, for people to be in the hotels, to go to conventions, to all that kind of stuff. That's going to be a much slower process as the economy begins to pick up and people begin to venture out. What will be a key factor in determining that? I believe that would be a much quicker turnaround if all we had to deal with was social unrest, right? What will be the major factor in that will be the pandemic. Because once we come into this second spike, which potentially could and probably will be much steeper and more severe than the first one, then what we will do is go back into this whole economic stagnation and decline. That is more my concern than people. Give you an example. The airport, we had gone from like 15,000 people a day on and going to the airport, taking flights to around 500 a day, right? But now it's picking up, so you're probably over 1,000 a day. So people are gradually beginning to move back into that, and I think I said as we look at that industry that supports the need for people to be large number of people, sporting events, conventions, and all that, I think that would happen. It'd take a while, but it would happen. My concern again would be the second spike of pandemic that would probably be more severe in the first one and would delay their recovery for much longer than we would do if we didn't have it.
Denise, what else you got?
I have a question from Leon Bibb. If this was 35 years ago, would you be on the protest line in the streets?
You know what? I've never protested. I've never demonstrated. Well, I can't say that. Let me correct that. I was an advocate. And that's probably why you asked me that question. I was an advocate. I was advocating against social injustice around poverty, people in public housing, the exploitation of people, the institutionalized racism, inequities, and disparities in all categories, both politically and socially. So I was doing that. When I got into elected office in 1990, January 1990, my whole purpose then and as it is now is to work on rectifying those inequities and disparities and dealing with the systemic nature of those things, plus the racism that is institutionalized, right? So I just do it differently. So his question is right on. Back then, 35 years ago, I was out in the street doing what I do. Now I'm mayor. I'm in the bowels of the beast. And so what I do now is distinctly different the way in which I try to handle it. But I made that choice. I made that choice rather than sitting on the outside complaining and pointing out the ills of society and getting a lot of amens. I made the choice to go in and do the work to make a difference. And I've spent a career of 30 years doing that.
Denise, another question?
35 years ago, I'd have been crazy in hell too, I guess.
Okay, we'll jump in with one more now, and then we'll go back to Russ. We have many in here, but one more quick one for you. Maybe this is a quick one. It was reported this week that Safety Director Michael McGrath announced his retirement Monday. 6 years ago, you promoted him from police chief to that position. He's overseen a division that had a lot of different controversial, damaging cases. And, you know, there's this continued lack of trust between police and the community in some ways. Any regrets, you know, making that decision?
No, absolutely not. Let me tell you something. I know that people have their opinions. A lot of times I find their opinions are based on whatever the trend or the popularity of that moment is, or just based on the ignorance of not knowing the facts. And I will say to you that Director McGrath has spent 48 years in public service. 48 years. As you know, 6 of those years has been as safety director. And the other 42 years was spent as a police officer, a person in the SWAT unit, a commander of a district, and the police chief. And I've yet to find someone, even the police officers who may not necessarily sit eye to eye or ride horse, you know, sit saddles with him, would say that he has been anything but a professional. People like me and just like all of you, you have your critics and you have your supporters. Now, one final thing, so that you know, I took a lot of flack for supporting him when people wanted me to fire him because he was a white man. Because he was a white man, and when the East Cleveland shootings occurred in the Chase and Tamir Rice. But I will say to you that when he was police chief and as director, his steadfastness of holding people accountable against the culture that he come from was the only reason why we were able to provide due process in our system and determination of people who were responsible for those things that they should not have done. Now, the arbitrator ruled against us, saying that even though we were correct, maybe we were just too harsh, is what he said, and that their year and a half out of a job, they should give them time served and bring them back to work. But that was not a decision made by Director McGrath or Police Chief McGrath. I do not regret it. He's been a good public servant.
Let's talk about crime, Mayor. Last weekend, we've had a couple weekends like this. I believe between 10 and 12 people were shot.
Right.
In the city of Cleveland. Another violent weekend. This is obviously an issue you've been grappling with since you became mayor. What's the issue when it comes to how has this changed over the years?
Well, let me several things. Let's start off with the whole demonstration about just pure injustice, an underlying issue of whether or not there's justice in America. That coupled with inequities, disparities, and racism that allows for the lack of people to gain full access to have a stake in this game that we call our society, whether it's economically, politically, or socially. So let's start there. If you don't start there, you really don't understand the issue. And so with that, you couple that with going back to then Police Chief McGrath, when the state allowed for basically anybody can carry a gun except an ex-felon. And we held a press conference at that time, and we challenged that ruling under home rule, and the state Supreme Court ruled against us, even though they found a way other than this constitutional right of home rule to rule against us. They found another way, but they ruled against us. Then Chief McGrath said, I can't tell you when, but I will guarantee you one thing. As a result of this ruling, people will die. And we will see an increase in our homicides. That's one. So injustice, inequities, disparity, institutionalized racism, political and policy agenda around legislation and schools of thoughts, all those kinds of things. And then just the pure availability of these guns in the hands of young people who feel like they have no stake. And with the coronavirus, we actually told people, not us, meaning me, but we've actually told the street that they're not going to jail. The jails are closed, except for people who commit some ultra-violent crime, I guess, and good luck in catching them, all right? And whenever you tell the street there's no consequences to its act, it will behave just as you see it behaving now. And I will tell you, holding people accountable under the dynamics I just presented to you is challenging.
Given, where does the buck stop, Mayor?
Look, the buck stops with all of us. It stops with all of us. It stops with that individual who chose to pull that trigger with no respect for life. It starts with an economic and social and political system. It starts with businesses who won't bring in ex-felons and give them opportunity when they're looking to opportunity. It stops with a lack of education in whoever comes. It stops with me. I'm the mayor of the city of Cleveland. It stops with you as media people and how you portray these things and how you message it and deliver and narrate it. It stops with all of us. We are a city. We are a society. And there's no one person to blame, and there's no one person to take credit. We function as a society, as a body. And our culture, our personality, our character is based on how we behave as a society. And if we choose as a society to leave people out and believe that they won't, as they tell you on the street, you got yours, I'll get mine, and I'll get it however I can. And if we choose that mentality to persist and not provide legitimate, not welfare and charity, but a legitimate access to quality of life and prosperity, then we all share in that. We all share in it. And since I'm the mayor, I'm the one that you talk to about it, and I accept my responsibility, but I will also not accept the responsibility of those who lay down on their jobs and not accept their end of this responsibility and do not become part of the solution.
You're going to give your State of the City address, I presume, later this year.
Yeah. I got to figure out if I'm going to do it virtual, right?
Yeah. Well, 6 months into this really hellacious year,
Mm-hmm.
how would you describe the state of Cleveland?
On different levels, it's different. It's different. The underlying things are still persisting, around institutionalized inequity, disparity, and racism, and the aftermath of those things and the consequences that we're going through now. And that's in every system, whether it's our economic, our social, our political, educational, healthcare delivery. So those are the more difficult things to change because they have a life of their own, they're institutionalized. In terms of our economy before the pandemic, our economy was going quite well, and it was growing and growing at a pretty good pace. And that we had recovered from the old being the blunt of jokes of the past to being a topic of conversation as to where people would like to go and experience Cleveland. We were recovering from that. We had begun to change some of the investment strategy of the private sector in terms of the financial institution and working with them to take a risk in areas that they would not take a risk in and they would not invest in because of a high risk. And we were beginning to work on that with our Glenville initiative out on 105 in Ashbury. And we were changing a lot of things around policing under the consent decree, which we actually welcome because it gives us a blueprint and a framework as to how to really reform a police department and do it not just to get out from under the consent decree, but have it sustainable beyond the consent decree. We were making progress there. We were making, in all those areas, we were making progress. But again, we fly in the face of just the way the beast operates, the way the system operates. And it does operate with it has an attitude.
We will wait until October or November to hear you give your State of the City.
I just gave it to you. I might provide a few more details, but basically.
Okay. Let me ask you about something.
I don't know, maybe it'll change by then.
Let me ask you about something you said a second ago. And listen, understanding in the scheme of things, this is not important, but you described a few weeks ago in talking about the image Cleveland has with some. You used the phrase butthole city. Yeah. In context, you said it's not true. So you listen to the interview, you say it that way, and you in context, it definitely does not mean what that 7 seconds says. However, let me ask you this. If you had to do it again, would you use the phrase butthole city at all?
No, I was what I meant right then. I really is what I meant. Is what I said. I'm not regretting it. I mean, the facts are what they are. And I think the context in which I said it, even our local media, after listening to it, said he really didn't say that. This is what he really meant. And so it became the BS of the moment, the drama of the moment, and then it quickly dissipated because it was a fact. I said it. And I wouldn't change it. If because what you're asking me, would I change it in order to avoid the BS of that moment, the bullshit that I had to deal with at that moment? And oh, I'm sorry. And be honest with you, that's what I meant. That we were considered the butthole of the world. And look at where we are now. It's exactly what I meant.
Denise, a couple of quick questions, and we'll wrap it up with the mayor.
Yeah, Mayor, one question. You are speaking to the press club. You're speaking to a bunch of journalists, as you know, and the press club did send a letter to your office. It was an open letter to your office after the protests, just because during that time, during the curfew time, you know, the journalists were part of that. They were banned. So I know that was later changed, but any reaction to the letter that the press club did send to your office?
Well, I was happy to receive it because I was not aware of it. And I think as I stated in the press conference when someone asked me about it, that I was not aware of it, and that if that was the case, then that would be changed. And we did it. Now, I'm not rationalize why someone did it or why they instituted that, but I do know this, that at that moment, things were pretty hairy out there. And that what they were attempting to do was protect people and to clear the streets. Because we believed then, as we believe now, that if we would continue to be diverted in downtown and not impose a curfew, that this would swiftly move to the neighborhoods. And so in order for us to prevent that from happening, we had to lock downtown down. We had to just lock it down. And then in locking it down, it gave us the ability to redeploy resources and personnel out in every neighborhood of the city of Cleveland where we believe that there would be a threat based on social media and intelligence. So I think in that context, it was an overreaction by somebody, but I was not aware of it. Once I was aware of it, then we corrected it.
Mayor, what are you most proud of in your time as mayor?
I can't tell you that. Again, everybody asks me that. They ask me what I'm least proud of and what I'm most proud of. I will tell you that whenever I'm no longer mayor, I will be completely honest with you like I am now. And I will tell you that. But while I'm engaged in being mayor, my whole intent is to be mayor. And I will do whatever I believe is necessary to do what is in the interest of this city and its people. That's how and that will be judged by somebody somewhere at some time, either in real time or in history. It would be judged. And then I'll have that conversation once I have a chance to debrief myself on that.
So we learned, among other things, that you have still not decided if you're going to run mayor again. I know the last time when this came up before, you said you were running because you didn't like any of the candidates. You had no confidence in any of the candidates. You had confidence. So you do that way this time.
Now, to give examples, show you what it. Now, I hadn't made up my mind then. And so, but when I saw what was going on and how it was lining up, I couldn't turn the city over to what I believe were individuals who did not have the real interests of the city at heart. Now, people may agree with me, or they may disagree with me. People may attribute motives to me, whether they're right or wrong. You know, that's irrelevant to me. But the one thing they cannot attribute to me is that I lie to people or that I do things contrary to the interests of this city or its people. And this is my city. I'm born and raised here, still live here. And I'm not going to just, for my own well-being, for my own protection, just turn over something that I care about to people who I know have an agenda that has nothing to do with the well-being of this city, even though they will say it. I won't do it. I just simply, and I could not do it. So yeah, at that time, once I saw what was happening, I made a decision. I said, I can't do this. This can't happen. Matter of fact, I said, this is not going to happen.
Any candidate this time? No one has announced anyone you see on the horizon now? You say this person has all the qualities to be a great mayor.
Well, you know what? If I would have decided not to run, there will probably have been some candidates that would have shown last time who would have been qualified people who chose not to run because I was running. And I believe the same thing will happen now. There are people who are good people with who care for the city with good intent, and very competent people, and have track records of demonstrating their competency and their care for this city that I think would be great mayor.
Yeah. Couple names?
No, I'm not going to do that because that's tantamount to endorsements. So I'm not going to do that.
When will we know, Mayor, if you're going to run again? When will you let us know?
Look, when I figure that out, you know. And I'm being honest with you. When my mind gets to the point of debating that issue, then I know it's time for me to make it up, right? And so when that time comes, and I will let you know. I won't let you know when I know, but I will, let you know, and everyone else know in a time where it will allow for open and energetic competition for the seat of mayor.
Well, if I can borrow a phrase, I guess on this note, it is what it is. Am I right?
But it is. Now, can I say one thing to that? You know what, people, I've been criticized for that too, in many different ways.
I wasn't being critical, but just so you'll know, I wasn't being critical.
I wanted to explain something to you. You know what I mean by it is what it is. I got two signs in my office that say that. Most people believe that what I mean by that is that there's nothing you can do about it. Oh, give me that sign. See, it is what it is, right? And so most people believe what I mean by that is that there's nothing you can do about it. It just is what it is. You have to accept your fate. That's not what I mean. What I mean is this, so that I'm clear, is that I have to accept reality, no matter how painful it is. No matter how painful it is. And if I reject that reality and choose to live in illusion, then my decision-making will be based on an illusion, not reality. So I have to accept that reality, no matter how painful it is. Then I go about trying to change that reality. And the only way I can change that reality is to deal with it, not through an illusion as the way it should be or what is comfortable for me to be in, but the reality. And because if I don't accept that reality and make policies and decisions based on that, then I won't change it. And all I would be is like other politicians who would just say the right thing, but won't take the risk of doing the right thing. And I just refuse to do that. So I will accept reality. It is what it is. They ain't gonna think I can do about it. In that reason, it is there, it's looking at me. And then I can then say, now, how can I change that reality? And what are the things that I should do in terms of policy, proposed legislation, financial stuff? What is it that I can do to help change that reality that exists? And that reality, not just in Cleveland, but throughout America, is rooted in injustice, institutionalized racism, inequities, and disparities. And yes, I make decisions many times not understood or criticized because I'm not living in an illusion that is more comfortable for people. And so I have to deal with it, and I deal with it. So it is what it is.
Mayor Frank Jackson, the 56th mayor of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. All the best to you, sir, and we hope to follow up on this conversation in the near future.
Well, you know what? I really appreciate you having this conversation and with me, and I really appreciate the fact that it was a direct conversation, not a fluff or easy conversation. I don't do well in those kind of things because I believe that's a waste of time. But the fact that you gave me the opportunity for clarity and is I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the frankness and the forthrightness of your approach in this.
All right, Mayor. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll see y'all. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
See you later. And we want to tell everyone who's on this Zoom to please join the Press Club. It's a wonderful organization. You'll have access to more great events like this. And we hope to see you again soon. Once again, thanks all for tuning in.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.